songs, let me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc, where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
Having that data is critical in the operation, and being able to solve, provide the need, show the need from whether it's surveys, whether it's personal testimony, and try to make the decision, taking your feelings out of it, just looking at the big picture and what's going to serve the most people in your community.
All right, we are live. This is Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Parks and Rec Show. We have our leadership series, which is every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. This is our flagship show that started it all. It's where I just interview Parks and Rec directors, leaders, superintendents, finding out their journey into Parks and Rec, how they got into it. And we have a great guest today. His name is Ed Merritt from Hilliard, Ohio. And we have a cool little transition. This is a little transition for this show alone, inspired by Jonathan Prue's show on the front line on Tuesday. He's like making all the other show hosts up their game and stuff. He does such a great job with creating content. I'm so glad we get to help him and partner with him to do that. So Jovi, why don't you play that little promo, that little transition, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you about the other shows we got lined up for the week. All right, so the Monday show that we have Smart Parks Forward with Dave Ramirez on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. I have, of course, my noon show, the leadership series, followed by the Smart Parks Forward show. Then we do another leadership series, 12 noon, the show again, which is what we're having right now, immediately followed today by John Prue's show, which is On the Front Line, the military rec show. So if you are on a military base, you might have noticed there's a full-blown Parks and Rec department on every military base. And he's been working with that for like 40 years through the Navy and through the armed forces and stuff. So really great show every Tuesday. That brings us to Wednesday. We have two monthly shows. The Rec Room was one of the oldest shows we have with Henry County, Georgia, where, and this is one of the best run Parks and Rec departments in America. They're doing such a great job. And you may see them speaking at a lot of your state conferences. They do, I think they spoke 17 times as a department at NRPA in Orlando. And so what they'll do is they'll take like a specific topic, like special events or farmers market or therapeutic recreation, and they bring in all the big players in their department and go deep on that one topic. And then we do 12 shows with them a year. So if you haven't seen those, they do a great job. They have an awesome leadership team there. And then on the first Wednesday of it, that one's on the second Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern of each month. And on the first Wednesday of every month with Thomas White, they do something on neurodivergence and the different minds, especially a lot of these creative kids that come in and might participate in STEM programs and stuff, about how Parks and Rec really benefits all these children in early childhood development and stuff. So really great show for that one. And then on Thursday, probably our oldest show, which is the Youth Sports Mastery show every Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you're an athletic director, a coach, an athlete, Aaron Locks has been doing this for 40 years, is one of the biggest authorities when it comes to rec sports, not just youth sports, which is kind of also includes your competitive leagues, but we're talking about like rec sports that includes all children, not just the next D1 athlete and stuff. And so it has a lot of great conversations around that. Now, also on Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, we have our Young Professionals Network. And so if you're not in Young Professionals Network and you're already a member of NRPA, it's free to join with your NRPA membership. And so if you're just in college or just coming out of college and you're very new to the industry of Parks and Recreation, this is kind of your place. And I think as long as you're around under 30-ish, they kind of keep it loose. Or if you're just new to the industry, let's say you were an accountant for a decade and you might be in your mid 30s, but you're new to Parks and Rec, that's also a good place for you to kind of meet the industry, find a mentor, and try to get your bearing straight on what is Parks and Recreation. That's every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And our latest edition, I think we're on our 4th show, is the Aquatics Life with our host, Wesley King, who is probably one of the most, has the greatest amount of wisdom I've ever encountered in aquatics. And aquatics is just a beast. It's a huge capital spend for any Parks and Rec department. And it is, talk about managing chaos, is a aquatic center. And so he has done some deep dives into that. If you have not watched his show the last 4 Fridays, it is a wealth of knowledge. Any any aquatics director or lifeguard or anything is going to get a lot out of it. So all that exists on our YouTube channel. You're welcome to go check that out. And then every Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the Aquatics Life show. So we're going to play 2 quick promos. One's just for DPRS Media, kind of explain what we are trying to do, our mission, our vision. And then we want to give a big shout out to Outdoor Link, one of our primary sponsors. Has been with us since the very beginning. Big shout out to DJ, the second generation entrepreneur running that company, and then Tasha and David Ramirez kind of run that show for us. And they are also one of our primary sponsors. So they help cities become smart cities. So if you have a smart home where you can control everything from your cell phone, your lights and AC and a garage door, imagine if your entire city was a smart city where you could control lights, splash pads, bathroom door locks. Like, this company helps y'all do that at like an insanely affordable rate. I think like $1,000. They will be able to control 4 sports fields or bathroom door locks and stuff like that. So it's just amazing what they can do and how affordable they are. So if you're looking to make your city into a smart city so that you can control it more efficiently rather than sending man and machine out to turn off breaker boxes and disconnects and stuff, definitely hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll connect you with that Outdoor Link team. Jovi, why don't you go ahead and play those 2 quick promos and we'll come back and start our conversation with Ed.
Welcome to DPRS Media Network, the voice of Parks and Recreation professionals, where leadership grows, facilities thrive, and communities connect. Leadership Series, insights from the leaders shaping our industry. Facility maintenance, the backbone of safe and sustainable spaces. Young Professionals Network, empowering the next generation of Parks and Rec leaders. The Rec Room, real conversations, real stories, real impact. Youth Sports Mastery, elevating the game for athletes and communities. Smart Parks Forward, innovation driving the future of recreation. On the front line, honoring those who serve our communities every day. Athletes Commute, the journey behind the performance. The Aquatics Life, everything aquatics, safety, staffing, sustainability. Safe Spaces and Green Spaces, a show exploring the connection between nature and mental well-being. And we don't just tell the stories, we show up where it happens. From local gatherings to national parks and recreation conferences, DPRS Media Network is on the ground, capturing conversations, highlighting innovation, and amplifying the voices shaping our industry's future. DPRS Media Network, connecting parks, empowering people, inspiring communities.
In today's parks and recreation industry, communication, safety, and efficiency go hand in hand. That's where Outdoor Link comes in, delivering smart technology that empowers city departments and community planners to do more, smarter. Outdoor Link's platform connects and automates everything that keeps your parks running smoothly, from lighting and locks to signage, water features, Wi-Fi, and digital advertising. Control and schedule park lights for safety and energy savings. Remotely manage facility access. Coordinate fountains and splash pads. Provide public connectivity. All from one simple, unified platform, giving you real-time control, data, and cost efficiency. For parks and recreation agencies, that means safer spaces, smarter resource use, faster responses, and stronger community engagement. And behind every great park story is great infrastructure. That's why Outdoor Link proudly supports DPRS Media Company, helping the daily Parks and Rec show amplify the voices of professionals shaping our communities every day. Outdoor Link, smart, connected solutions for parks, recreation, and beyond.
All right. So we're back with Ed Merritt. How's your week going so far?
It's going great. How about yours?
Yeah, fantastic, man. Loving the weather down here in New Orleans. How's it doing up there in Ohio?
Unfortunately, in Ohio, it's like a yo-yo. Some days it's beautiful, 80 degrees. Some days it's 40 and frost warning. So you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you ever find yourself in New Orleans and you're looking to escape the cold, definitely look me up. I'll show you around.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's go back into your early career. How did you get into Parks and Recreation? Did you kind of know that you wanted to do this as a young person, or did you discover it later in life?
No, I discovered it in college. Really had no idea. Like many young adults, went to school and sort of was lost in what I wanted to do. Went through a couple different majors, declared majors, and then I had a professor. Her name was Kathy Munger, who was doing an intro to recreation class, and it had never crossed my mind that could have been a profession, and basically fell in love with it through her class. Unbeknownst to me growing up, I had a lot of different experiences that sort of led me to that point. So that was a pretty pivotal time choosing the career that I went into.
Yeah. Now, is she still teaching, or where does she teach? Where was that university again?
So I did my undergraduate at Bowling Green State University. She has since retired, and they no longer actually have an accredited department for recreation. So they do have sports management. You can still go through, and there's different tracks you can take. But I was a little disappointed
Oh,
to
yeah.
hear that they did away with that.
Well, that's one of the things we're trying to accomplish with the media company, is just raise awareness of how important this industry is and how vital it is to the future of our communities. And hopefully this is, as the AI and the robots kind of take over, it seems like the only thing left to be done is go have fun in the park and maybe make a difference in your community. So I'm hoping this industry really explodes as people are kind of looking to live a more quality of life than just, hitting the grind every day. So we'd love to get Kathy or any other professor that's teaching on this field. We'd love to have them on the show just to, highlight their career in teaching Parks and Rec to young kids coming in. That would be fantastic. Of course, I don't know if she'd be willing to come on a show now. How retired is she?
She's been retired for quite a while, actually. That's the hard thing. I'm 30 years in the field right now.
Yeah.
But most of those individuals, I had two or three that stick out in my mind are long gone. My advisor was an incredible woman, Dr. Gavron, and she was probably one of the toughest women physically. She was fighting cancer as we went through and teaching classes and just a real inspiration. But some of those individuals have been retired for 20+ years.
We went up to IPRA up in Illinois, and I met a guy. He was actually on the show, and he was in his maybe middle 80s, like 85 years old. And he's Parks and Rec director. He was a professor, and now he's working with the board and all that kind of stuff. And when he told me his age, I was like, there's no way you're 85. He looks so good and so vibrant and full of energy. And he's like one of those guys that looks like he's never going to retire because he loves what he does.
Yeah, it brings life to a lot of people, giving back, and the whole service aspect of what we do. And it's an integral part of a lot of communities, so that you can get a lot from it.
Yeah. All right, so let's think back to those days. So you're like in your early 20s, just graduating with your Parks and Rec degree. What was kind of your first job in Parks and Recreation?
So I did my internship in my hometown department, Grove City Parks and Rec. I went through and did that, graduated, and I was pretty fortunate. They hired me on part-time, helping out with their sports programs and that kind of thing. Barry Babbert was our director at that point in time, and he did something that obviously changed my career, he talked me into going to the Ohio Parks and Recreation Association, their annual conference.
Oh, nice.
And while we were there, they used to do this session where it was take a student to lunch day. And so I begrudgingly signed up to meet somebody and go out to lunch with them. And I was very fortunate that Jim Garges, who was the then director of the Kettering Recreation and Cultural Arts Department, picked me to take me to lunch. And back then we had sort of that roving model where it would go to a lot of the big cities in our state. Each year it'd be in a different big city. And we were in downtown Dayton. He took me to lunch, and what should have probably been about a 45-minute lunch ended up being almost close to 2 hours. And at the end,
Wow.
end of our conversation, he's like, "Hey, can you drive a Zamboni?" And I kind of looked at him. I don't know how to. I grew up playing around with heavy equipment. That's what my father did for a living. I don't think it'd be that hard for me to learn. I go, "Why?" He's like, "Well, I've got an ice rink in our rec center, and we're looking for a supervisor." He's like, "Why don't you apply for that position?" Now, mind you, I had probably skated 3 or 4 times in my life. It wasn't a real big thing in Columbus at that point in time. And so I applied, and 2 interviews later, I was their new ice rink supervisor, having to hit the ground from the beginning running and learn everything it was about ice rinks. So not only was I drinking through a fire hose from getting into the Parks and Rec field as a green young professional, but then learning a talent that I had no idea about. And then, I was very fortunate to be surrounded by a bunch of great professionals that took me under their wing. Like I said, Jim Garges was one of the most influential mentors that I had, and really had me getting involved and learning at every turn that I came upon. So he pushed me into, whether it was OPRA and leadership, whether, he encouraged me to sign up for Indiana University's executive development program, pushed me into getting an our aquatics facility operators certification, CPRP, all those things, and kept pushing me to do and be involved with a lot of those things. So through those processes really helped develop me as a young professional. And then I was also fortunate, Kettering paid for me to go back and get my master's degree. So I was able to attend the University of Dayton and get my master's in public administration while I was there too. So
wow.
I was there for 10 years. It was a great experience, awesome department. Obviously, it's a gold medal winning department, accredited multiple times. So I cut my teeth at one of the best, and from there I went back to Columbus and worked for my hometown department as their recreation superintendent. So that was sort of the beginning. I spent 10 years with Kettering, getting involved with OPRA, getting involved with NRPA, and learning the business from the ground up. And I was fortunate because our department had a little bit of everything. The Kettering Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department had a huge rec center, had a water park, extensive parks, had a cultural arts department, had the Phrase Pavilion for outdoor. It was an outdoor amphitheater, had a nature center. So I got exposed to a lot of different areas that I wouldn't have if I'd have started off somewhere else.
Yeah. Man, you're like threading the needle, hitting the lottery there. I
was very fortunate.
Right. We have to find a way to replicate your journey coming in. I mean, you did an internship, you graduated from a university that taught to this degree specifically, which is now no longer happening. You got an OPRA in the early days and then got a mentor like right out the gates, and then worked for a gold medal department. I'm like, is there any other box that you could possibly check off?
No, I was very fortunate, and that's, been the biggest part of my career journey is taking from those individuals, the mentors that I have, taking advice and taking it seriously and follow through on it. And I was just fortunate to be plugged into the right people at the right time. And very, it was an awesome trip.
Yeah. So a lot of times we talk about, getting a mentor, getting connected to somebody that's maybe a veteran, but maybe you can think about what did you look at that made a really great mentor? Like what impact did they have on you in those early days? What kind of skills did they kind of did you see in them that they kind of handed off to you?
Early on, you could tell who the leaders were, even amongst directors in like the state of Ohio. So being able to watch them interact at conferences, seeing who people went to, seeing who was presenting, and working through the accreditation process and stuff like that. And so you took advantage. I was fortunate because I had one as a director, and he
Right.
took me under his wing. And when Jim asked for something or recommended something, you followed through.
Yeah.
And that was the same too with other directors that I had, or other leaders in our field. You paid attention and you learned from them, whether it was good, bad, or in between. You could see how you wanted to model yourself after as a professional, and you could see other individuals that, hey, while I understand where they're coming from, that's not what I want to do when I get the opportunity to be in their seat. And so you take away from those experiences and make sure that when you have the opportunity, you capitalize on it.
All right, so let's talk about what was the kind of first job that you had in Parks and Recreation, where maybe it was a leadership opportunity, or maybe you were just like sitting on the Zamboni or something. What did those first couple of years look like for you?
The first few years was, part-time work, whether it was at BG, when I was going to school at Bowling Green. I had to stay on campus during the summertime because I played football for the university, and working for their Bowling Green City summer camp. So that was one of my first experiences with kids in summer camp, whether it was working at a golf course. I did 2 summers at the Toledo Country Club up in Toledo, right north of Bowling Green. Towards the end, I was fortunate, I worked for our local township and working with different aspects of their street crew and mowing and doing some of those things. So I had a pretty well-rounded background. Also had some stints working in pools, being a lifeguard, helping with the maintenance aspect of pools from a pretty young age. So as I continued to move up through the field, and again, this is before I necessarily knew I was going to be in Parks and Recreation. Once I got into Parks and Recreation, it was working with the sports background, doing special events, helping out as needed anywhere in the department. And then when I got my first full-time job, obviously running the ice rink, but part of that ice rink, it was only open about 10 months out of the year. So in the summertime, as we closed down the ice rink, I helped with our water park. So I got from a young age, from a very green professional, got to learn and understand about the operations of pools and water parks and managing those types of facilities. And from there, I was the recreation superintendent for Grove City Parks and Rec Department when I came back to Columbus, and I was in charge of the recreation side of the house. So things like before and after school care, summer camp, all of our programming, special events, things like that. So I got a wide gamut of experience working in those positions too.
Yeah. Now I've spoken we've had former guests on the show that were our directors now, but they kind of cut their teeth on the being an aquatics director. And they told me that when they were an aquatics director, they basically learned all the different parts of the whole Parks and Rec department, because they would, have programming for like the older community, the babies and their moms, the swim lessons in between, parties and special events. Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about, because you said, what did you do as far as with your aquatic center? Did you actually run the whole thing, or you just like lifeguard or management or something?
A little of everything. So I started off at a younger age as lifeguard. Now in Kettering, I helped out with a lot of the maintenance. So I would do the early morning checks, make sure all the chemicals were correct, do the backwashing, things of that nature, help out with different trainings. That was one of the big things in Kettering, was the first aid and CPR trainings, confined space training, stuff like that. But understanding how to operate those trained staff, and then a huge part of it was customer service training. You talked a little bit about the whole philosophy of from the womb to the tomb.
Yeah.
But that couldn't be more true. We're programming and having facilities for individuals from a very young age all the way up through end of life, and making sure we're doing so in a manner where they feel like they have a home is very important.
Yeah. All right. So now, how long have you been a director in total?
So in two stops, I've been in my current position for 8 years, and before that, I was with the Village of Obetz as a director for 2 years. Previous to that, I was the recreation superintendent for Grove City for approximately 10 years.
Yeah. Now, before you became a director, was there anything, let's say after you became a director, was there something that you realized, as you made that transition, of gaps that you had that you kind of had to fill up to actually kind of, be captain of the whole ship? What type of skill sets did you bring into that? And then after you became the director, where did you see that needed kind of shoring up?
So I made sure as I was coming up through, whether it was my first experience with Kettering or Grove City, that any opportunity to learn, I took advantage of. So whether it was getting the AFO, whether it was going through the certified playground safety instructor training, and I kind of did that by on a whim, and it was actually a very challenging course, believe it or not. Going through the executive director leadership program through Indiana University, a huge one for me was revenue management school through NC State. That was a big one for me, and understanding numbers, because you have to remember, when I started in the field, we were considered more of a service industry. We had a different view than necessarily what we have today. Now you talk more about cost recoveries and some of those things. We still have aspects of the service industry portion of it, but it's becoming more business-like, each and every day. So having those trainings and understanding more about finance. And honestly, the biggest thing that I think I wasn't ready for was the whole politics side of being a director in a Parks and Rec department. In the state of Ohio, we have primarily two different types of municipalities. We have a strong mayor government. We have a strong city manager government. And depending on which one you are, politics comes into play a lot more. So for the strong mayor form of government was a little more challenging for me, because it brings in politics into the day-to-day operation a little bit more. I'm fortunate right now we're in a city manager strong form of government here in Hilliard, and to me, you've basically hired somebody that's professionally trained to run the business of a city, and it takes a little bit of that out of the equation, which makes it easier for me to in a day-to-day capacity.
All right. So just to kind of understand that correctly. So if you've got a strong mayor that's really hands-on and kind of appoints his people as director heads, then you're kind of forced into politics along with him. But if you've got like a city manager, which is kind of like stands in between those two bodies, then they'll stay there. The mayors will come and go, but the city manager stays, and then you're kind of part of his team versus the mayor bringing in his team. Am I framing that correctly?
Yeah, with the mayor, they're the ones that are hiring department heads, things of that nature. With the city manager, there isn't necessarily a mayor. I mean, there is technically in the fact that one of the council members is in that seat in case of a tie, depending on how you got everything set up for your municipality. But you are insulated a little bit from those. The way that we're set up currently, council basically sets budget and helps with direction. The city manager then is in charge of actually leading the city departments.
All right. So then let's say you're stuck in one of these, you're stuck in the politics of it all. What's the best way to kind of navigate that so that you can still serve your community, make your community thriving and beautiful, but at the same time, you do have to play your part in the political side?
From my standpoint, you try to be as neutral as possible, irregardless of what your thoughts are. And
Right.
I have pretty strong convictions, but at the same time, it doesn't always benefit the department. And in my professional capacity, I'm first and foremost responsible for leading our department and making sure that we're able to get the things that we need so that our staff's able to perform on a daily basis. So trying to stay neutral, trying to look at it from the bigger picture, and understanding what's best for the community as on a whole. One of the biggest things that I had to overcome is, by nature, people that get into this industry are people pleasers. We're not going to make everybody happy. And that's a challenge, because that's what you strive for. You try to make everybody happy. You try to please people. You want, the whole reason we do Parks and Recreation is to create that sense of community, provide places where people can come and congregate and feel whole and get exercise, parks and those types of things. So when people are disappointed and complaining, that was one of the bigger challenges of me stepping into that leadership role that I had to overcome.
Yeah. So how do you kind of compartmentalize that part of your brain or your heart that really wants to just, serve everybody, but you just have to kind of say no to some people? How have you gotten better at that?
There's tools that you can use, surveys, stuff like that you sort of lean back on when you've got into it, and especially when you know your community pretty well. What a lot of the asks have been over the years, especially if you've been there for a few years. What the true needs are of the community. I love talking to any of our residents and having conversations, debates, things like that, and trying to explain where we're coming from. Obviously, we've got a budget process that we go through, especially with some of the capital projects and stuff like that, but understanding where their wants and needs are, and then trying to explain big picture with the community and sort of how it falls into place.
Yeah, I had one guest, can't remember where he was from, but he said, we just try to make data-driven decisions. When a mayor wants to do a project, we just present the master plan, say, here's what we said yes to, here's what's funded. Which one of these items do you want me to take off the list to put your new item on the list?
Yeah.
And then that's when they start thinking, actually, I want all this on the list, And so it kind of lets them fight the data, not you.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good way to do it.
Having that data is critical in the operation, and being able to solve, provide the need, show the need from whether it's surveys, whether it's personal testimony, and try to make the decision, taking your feelings out of it, just looking at the big picture and what's going to serve the most people in your community.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we kind of blew past the halfway point. We're going to take a little quick break. We're going to promote CPRS and IPRA. These are two great states that do an amazing job with their conference. And word on the street is OPRA also does an amazing job. And I can't wait to get to their annual convention with the Daily Parks and Rec show. But had a great time in January. It was freezing. It was like -8 degrees in Illinois. They host their conference at the end of January in Chicago. So if you're not used to that temperature, it's shocking, me coming from New Orleans. And then a couple of weeks ago, we just got back from the California Parks and Rec Society. They did a great job. Big shout out to both those executive directors. They do an amazing job and have a great culture in their Parks and Rec community. So we made 2 little promos kind of summing up everything that happened. So Jovi, if you want to go ahead and play those 2, when we come right back, we're going to talk a lot about construction projects, facilities maintenance with Ed. This is something that he's kind of done a deep dive in. So play those and we'll come right back.
It started with a shared purpose, a vision to bring people together, to inspire, to learn, and to lead. And at CPRS Conference 2026, that vision came to life. From every conversation to every connection made, this wasn't just an event. It was a community in motion. Ideas were challenged, perspectives were expanded, and leaders stepped forward, ready to shape the future of parks and recreation. At DPRS Media Network, we had the privilege of capturing it all. The passion, the innovation, the stories that deserve to be seen and heard. Because these moments don't just stay here, they ripple outward, into communities, into programs, into lives. To the organizers, the speakers, the partners, and every single attendee, thank you for showing up, for sharing your voice, and for being part of something bigger than all of us. This is more than a conference. This is a movement. And DPRS Media Network will continue to tell your story every step of the way. We'll see you at the next one. This year, we didn't just attend an event. We became part of something bigger. IPRA 2026 brought together leaders, innovators, and community builders, all united by one mission: to strengthen parks, recreation, and the people they serve. For DPRS Media Network, it was an honor to join IPRA 2026 and take part in meaningful, real-time conversations, capturing stories and amplifying voices that matter. To IPRA, thank you for creating a space where collaboration thrives and the future of parks and recreation is shaped together. We extend our deepest gratitude to Amelia and all our partners who made these live interviews possible. IPRA 2026 wasn't just an event, it was a reminder that when communities connect and stories are shared, impact follows. From all of us at DPRS Media Network, thank you, IPRA. Thank you, partners and sponsors. We're honored to stand with you and excited for what's next.
All right, so let's start this facilities maintenance project management conversation. This is unbeknownst to people outside the industry. You see like the festivals and the programming and the soccer tournaments going on, and you don't realize that there is an army of people keeping all this up and running and beautiful and ready for the next event. So it's by our estimation, it's easily half of the manpower and the revenue it's dedicated to just keeping everything beautiful and ready to go for your next event. So maybe explain just to the crowd that doesn't understand this, like what's the work that goes on every day to do this?
Yeah, a lot of people just don't even realize. I mean, let's say living in our community here in Hilliard, we, as far as parks, have 25 parks with a little over 550 acres. So what does it take to operate a park? You know, people complain if the grass isn't cut, if the ponds are stagnant, you know, God forbid if there's a dead duck or something in the park, you know, if there's a aspect of a playground that isn't up to snuff, that kind of thing. So a big portion of it is, you know, whether it's cutting grass, whether it's performing maintenance on playgrounds, the facilities that we offer, making sure we're doing planning for those activities, ordering that kind of stuff. But there's a lot that goes into that. So making sure that the facilities are, you know, obviously exceed expectations of our residents, and that when things do come up, when little Johnny's got a soccer game, lacrosse game, that those facilities are ready and waiting for them, and exceed, like I said, exceed their expectations from the standpoint of cleanliness and fit and finish.
Yeah, I'll give you one great example that I didn't even think about. You just walk up to a playground and it's just, you know, ready to go on the slide and stuff. But did you know there's probably 100,000 playgrounds across America that somebody's showing up at 6 a.m. and making sure there's no beer bottle, or that there's no needle, or that there's something that happened that night. And every single morning, somebody's visiting the playground to say, it's just ready for a mom and the kids in a stroller to show up. And it's just this silent work that goes on. And that's just one of, like, think about how many trash cans there are throughout all the playgrounds of America.
I wish I had this number. Each year, my one supervisor that oversees a lot of the staff that clean our parks gave me the number of trash bags that we utilized last year, and it was
you got to get that number for me. I would love it.
But, you know, each day we have people in our parks going through, whether it's blowing off the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, things of that nature, whether it is doing a safety check on the playgrounds, emptying the trash cans around that. It could be the multitude of shelter houses that we have, making sure that they're ready for their next rental, making sure that they hadn't been vandalized, things of that nature. So there's a lot that go into it. And then you look at all the different types of facilities that we have. We're very fortunate. We've got a community pool on the east side of town. We've got a water park on the west side of town. We just finished in September our new recreation complex. It's called The Well. It's an 111,000 square foot rec center that we did in partnership with the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center. So they have space in that facility as well as our community center. It's one of those things where you do a integrated well-being with a medical provider. So we were excited when that opened last year. But just trying to make sure that you are able to take care of all those different types of facilities. We've got athletic complexes. We've got a 18-hole disc golf course, a lot of ponds that are stocked. So a lot goes into the operation of all those facilities and trying to make sure that, again, we're exceeding expectations from the public.
Yeah, and sadly, you can take out the trash 100,000 times, and if one gets overflowed, that's the one that everybody calls you on.
Oh yeah, and we're victims of our own success. Through COVID, we created a DORA, a downtown outdoor refreshment area in our historic downtown area, trying to help local businesses and get people outdoors, because that was the safe aspect at that point in time. While we saw such a resurgence in our historic downtown, that now it's a challenge to keep up with those trash. So we've got our Hilliard Station Park downtown that we do a lot of special events and that kind of thing. We will keep, there's a section of the road on Center Street that we keep closed, and we have a lot of picnic tables, and it's surrounded by a bunch of local businesses. You have those days in between the frost here in Ohio, and let's say it's 80 degrees in the evening, that place is packed.
Right.
Well, for us, it's a challenge because, our main part of our staff doesn't come back until college is out. High school's out, college is out, and then we've got quite a few of our seasonal and part-time employees back on the workforce. So we struggle sometimes to keep up with the litter and people utilizing and taking advantage of our parks on warmer days.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can kind of sneak up on you because you can go to, an area where it's cold, nobody's out there, the trash hardly fills up, and then you get a beautiful spring day, and you went from empty trash cans to overflowing in like at lunch at an hour. So you're given no heads up. It's not like there's some alarm. That's what somebody needs to invent, an alarm when the trash gets full to just ping out all these red.
So your one sponsor, I know they're actually trying out, and I don't know for sure that company is, but I know through AI and some of those that there are a couple different businesses that have sensors that mount in the lids that are able to give you a heads up when trash is to capacity. So it's some of the things that they're working on, but a big portion of what we do on a day in, day out basis is boots on the ground. So for me, I like the computerized aspect, that sort of heads up, but at the same time, there's nothing to me that replaces individuals in the park that are able to troubleshoot when a situation arises, or let's say, whether it's a swing that's broken or somebody had knocked over a trash can, making sure that you're able to take care of those sooner than later.
Now, I know you have these, you'll form these public-private partnerships with like a big employer locally, and everybody wants to build the next playground or build the next pickleball complex or something, but nobody wants to provide funding for the ongoing maintenance of our aging infrastructure. How do you kind of help remind the people that are funding the next park to say, hey, we also need help to keep the current parks we have beautiful?
And some of those are, conversations that you have to have amongst your city leadership during the design process. When you're sitting there and they're going through and saying, okay, we want to build this amount of houses, or we think we want to have, a large developer wants to build a park and then give it to the city. that's when you have those conversations. Hey guys, we've got 25 parks, 550 acres. Is this in the best interest of the city,
Mm,
or should we ask them to set up their homeowners association and have them take care of that open
yeah.
space?
Yeah.
Because we went through a time where we accepted a lot of those infrastructures, and whether or not they weren't built up to a standard that we follow necessarily, or we for just different things. Over the long run, it's become more of a headache to maintain and
Mm,
take care of, because it wasn't necessarily, whether it wasn't done right in the first place, or it's 30, 35 years old, and those blacktop paths that you put in a long time ago are now need redone, and the cost of asphalt's gone up
yeah.
tremendously. So the infrastructure isn't sexy, but it's a necessity, and making sure that you're able to take care of what you have is very important.
Right. Yeah, and then people don't realize the quality, the difference in quality. I mean, the playground you're putting up in your backyard for a couple thousand. I mean, I'm not sure you can get into a playground for under 100K. Usually, you're spending a quarter million on up to. We had a out in California, had a company, not a company, but a department spend $10 million on a massive playground, and so this is major capital outlay,
Mhm.
and it's they have to be built right. Otherwise, you end up with a maintenance nightmare on your hands.
Well, maintenance nightmare, safety
Yeah.
aspect of it. Now there's a liability. We're pretty fortunate in the state of Ohio to have a recreation immunity law, but
Mm,
a lot of states don't necessarily have that. And then you've got to think of it as a depreciating asset. That playground's going to last about 10 to 15 years
mhm.
if you maintain it properly. So are you ready to make that next $10 million
Right.
investment? It's the same with our turf fields. You put in the synthetic turf field, as soon as you open that and cut the ribbon, there's a clock running of when it's going to need to be replaced, or the maintenance going to need to be done for the field, whether you're taking off some of the infill and cleaning it, whether you're out there on a weekly basis making sure that all the fibers are standing up correctly to prolong the life of the field. Most people in the community have no clue, besides the fact that they want to be on it, and it helps lessen cancellations due to rain and things that
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah. Yeah, and we had, of course, there's a big fight back and forth. Do we go natural turf, or do we go the synthetic turf? And of course, a lot of the purists just love the grass, but of course, that grass needs to rest, and you just can't
Mhm.
use the field as much. But as far as cost, it's almost like a wash, because, like you said, there's a clock that starts even on that synthetic turf, and that's a big bill that you got to pay every 4, 5, 6 years to replace all that.
Yeah, and it comes back to your community conversation. What are you looking for? How much use are you going to have in it? I don't think anybody would argue that grass is a safer, better product, but there's a lot of drawbacks, especially in the Ohio climate, where,
Right.
let's say, for the last 4 days it's been a monsoon. Well, you're not going to get out on the grass field tonight and practice.
Right.
But
Right.
at the same time, on a turf field. So I think if you're a community and you're able to afford it, having a mixture of both, so that you're able to not solely eliminate practices and that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
provide two different options, is the way to go. I would much, from the old athlete in me, I'd much rather play on grass than turf, but it's sort of the nature of the
Yeah.
business.
All right, so let's talk about now. This conversation is rarely had, and it's the project management conversation. And maybe you can help me define what a project is. It could range anywhere from we're just refurbishing an old playground on up to building a massive aquatic center, a community center, and everything in between. How some of these you do in-house if it's kind of a smaller project, and then some you have to work with a design and architecture firm. So how can you maybe better clarify what is project management in Parks and Recreation?
Project management could be as simple as painting a room in your recreation complex.
Mm, right.
It's setting out sort of that timeline of when it's going to happen, when we're not going to be able to utilize that area, and when the work is going to actually be performed, and then how long does it take to dry, and then open that back up. all while making sure that you're alerting the public to what's going on. Because
Yeah.
if you don't let them know, hey, this classroom's going to be closed, oh, it's bad. And God help us if we close a playground down and it wasn't, everybody wasn't in the know. You didn't do those community meetings. So it could be as small as painting a room. For me, a lot of the smaller things, a lot of the playground builds, unless you're getting over $1 million, are things that we're probably going to work directly with the playground manufacturers, because most of the 4 or 5 of the big companies have their own designers on staff. But once you get into, like, we're getting ready to do a renovation of our aquatics facility, our water park. That's probably when you're going to bring in an outside project manager to help with the project. That's when you're going to have architects come in and provide you with documents. Obviously, you're going to have multiple public meetings to see what the public wants and what direction they want to go in. In our instance, it's an aging facility that's getting to the end of its useful life, and we've had multiple meetings with the public about what they would like to see. And then from a management standpoint, for us, that facility was built during a time that labor was cheap and plentiful. Well, let's face it. Today, it's a lot more difficult to find part-time staff, and it's a lot more expensive. So instead of having 6 bodies and have it, laid out over a large area, we're looking to be more efficient in the operation of that facility. I don't necessarily want to lose any amenities, but what I want to do is be able to operate that facility with less staff. And still be able to provide all the bells and whistles and enjoyment to the community. So taking a look at it from that standpoint, and then having the project manager truly helps, because let's face it, on a day-to-day situation, I'm not going to be able to be on site with the project every day. Well, you're hiring somebody that's responsibility is, to oversee, whether you're doing a construction manager at risk setup, however you've set up your construction project, to be there on a daily basis to provide the oversight, to provide those inspections and that kind of stuff, and then sort of be your liaison and helping you through the process and project. So it's a huge resource. We recently, with the well opening, that project was about 2.5 years under construction for the rec center portion of it. And to say it was a huge lift is an understatement. And if it wasn't, we had a very strong project manager for that project. And man, if it wasn't for him, we would have been lost.
Yeah.
So having, making sure you're doing your homework, getting the right person under contract and working with you and understanding what that means. I was fortunate that I've had quite a few different projects through my career that I had the ability to work on and learn from a lot of great individuals through those processes. But when you're doing our last project was $110 million, and when you're sitting down and paying bills and wanting to make sure that you're getting everything right, obviously you got to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars, making sure as you're going through the design process and you're doing the fit and finish of the facility, and choosing whether the faucets, the countertops, the type of flooring, making sure that it's durable, it's going to last, a long time, and hopefully be almost indestructible. So making those choices while still making it fun, making it, enjoyable. People want to be able to come into a facility and have it be inviting. While that's not my forte, we had a lot of creative people that helped out with color selection and design and that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love how you kind of describe that. It's project management in Parks and Rec is kind of like constantly changing the bus, the tires on the bus while it's going down the road. You try to keep these facilities up and running. You just shut down a small portion of it, but you got to let everybody know, because otherwise they'll book a birthday party and not realizing the playground is going to be shut down in the middle of the party and stuff. All right, so let's talk about the difference between, you've got all these little macro projects coming in and out of your department, but then you have like the maintenance crews. These are like the lawnmowers, the trailers, the trucks, the weed eaters, the blowers, the tree trimmers. Like, let's talk about that world in Parks and Recreation. What's that like to manage?
It's a different world, right? You get into a cadence. You've got your schedules set up, and that's the easy part. Now the challenge is when you have staff that, whether they have a child sick and call in, whether they're not feeling good themselves, and trying to still accomplish the same workload with less individuals, and just, you try to do your best job, doing the preventative maintenance to extend the life of whatever asset you're talking about. And then you try to set up a schedule that works the best. Now, that the challenge we have, especially, in the spring up here in Ohio, is you never really know when the weather's going to break. And the weather could break for 2 or 3 days, and then we could have 3 or 4 more snows. So you never truly know when the grass is really going to start growing. So it's your best guess, and you have to be ready for just about anything. And then, trying to get your staff back on, because there's a lull over the winter where, especially where a lot of our part-time help will go back to school, whether it's in college, whether it's either high schoolers. We'll keep some of our retirees on staff and try to keep them as long as possible year round and helping out. But it's trying to find that sweet spot of when to gear back up for everything going on. So whether it's spreading mulch on the playgrounds, making sure they're up to code, whether it's making sure that the grass is cut, all the flowers, the bushes, all those things are manicured and ready to go. It could be as simple as the schedule for cleaning all the glass on the facilities that we have, and making sure that the fit and finish on those are exceed expectations. So
yeah. Let's talk about some of the skilled labor that y'all deploy. And I know as an industry, you'll have a lot of times you'll have like master arborists, master electricians, people that are pretty much plumbers or over irrigation. What are some of the skilled craftsmen that y'all kind of look for to hire on the maintenance side?
We look for anybody that has previous experience, that it has the ability to have interactions, customer service with other individuals. So if you do have those backgrounds, we're when you start talking about having plumbers and electricians and, whether it's woodworkers, locksmiths, stuff like that on staff, you're usually talking about the bigger departments. The city of Columbus, has thousands of employees. We don't. So we've got a much smaller staff, much more nimble, and then we utilize contracts, bringing outside businesses for some of those things. So we're fortunate to have a very talented staff, and some of those individuals have different backgrounds that enable us to do stuff in-house, rather than farming that work out. But sometimes you do have to go out and get the bids and do those projects that way. So we're always looking for individuals that are go-getters, hard workers, that have some sort of background, whether, it could be outdoors, it could be arborist work, it could be lawn mowing, it could be, you were in the military and you worked on equipment, any of that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we're just looking for people that want to come into our community, work hard and make a difference, and hopefully have fun, because why are we doing the things we're doing if we're not, as a staff, having fun?
Yeah, I tell you, if you can keep small engines running and are kind of mechanical, you have a job for life, because the amount of weed eaters and blowers and mowers and trailers and tires, that it's just never ending. Every Parks and Rec department would love to have you on staff.
Yeah,
you can keep a weed eater running. All right, well, let's go ahead and close out the show with OPRA. So you were the president over there. Tell us a little bit about what Ohio does and what their association looks like.
So we're an association, and it sort of serves a wide range of parks and recreation professionals. I mean, when you talk about small cities, big cities, urban, rural, park districts, state agencies. So over the years, I've been a member my entire 30 years in the profession as a full-time staff member. I was very fortunate that I got pushed on to volunteer and serve. I started off in serving our conference committee, and I oversaw setting up the exhibit hall. I worked with another professional and did that for several years, volunteering. From there, I got voluntold to put my application in to be a board member for OPRA, and got elected to be a board member. Started off there. Once I was on the board, my seat was overseeing our awards banquet at our annual conference. So helped oversee that for a few years, and got, a few years in, got reelected to a second term. And our executive director asked me if I would like to be the president of the agency, or of the organization. So you go through and the first year you're the vice president, and then you serve as the president, and then you're on as the ex officio for the following year. But it was for me, it was a great opportunity to give back to our profession. We had, our agency's been growing over the last 10 years by leaps and bounds. And being able to provide the leadership for the organization along with our staff, that we have 3 full-time staff at OPRA, and it was just awesome. So it forced me to get outside of my comfort zone. By nature, I'm more of an introvert, not an extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
So putting me in situations where you're, at our state conference that year, I think I was giving speeches to, the delegation, which was about 600, at the awards ceremony. I think this year, we were talking earlier, I think we had 1,800, including our vendors at our annual conference. So it's been growing by leaps and bounds, but definitely, yeah. It's great. The biggest thing is just the networking, getting to know other professionals, creating that atmosphere to where if you've got a question and somebody else has, let's say, an ice rink, and you've got a question about how they do something, it opens that door. It's a lot more easier to call somebody and to ask, hey, let me pick your brain about that. A lot of times we're not reinventing the wheel in what we're doing, but just hearing what other agencies, how they're doing it, and then making the decision for your community, what works best in your community is sort of how we go about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hear they do a great job, and maybe you can help me get in touch with the executive director there. It takes us almost a year to kind of coordinate all that and get the ball rolling. So anytime we can get those conversations started, I would love to attend Ohio's Parks and Rec Association meeting.
Definitely.
But well, Ed, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing with us your journey into Parks and Rec and how you handle all the chaos that is being a director of the Parks and Rec community. I really appreciate the work you're doing.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to come have a discussion with you. It's been awesome.
Fantastic. Well, have a great rest of your week.
You do the same now. Take care.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Ed. Bye. All right. So that was another great leadership series show with Ed Merritt, former president of the Ohio Parks and Rec Association. Hopefully we can make it out there one year. We try to attend about 15 to 20 a year. We're trying to build out our road crew and all the cameras and mics and everything we have to bring to it. But hopefully we'll be able to expand that out so that aspirationally one year, maybe we can attend all 50 states. That would be a great goal to have as we seek to build out a media company that covers the Parks and Rec industry across America, as we kind of, our vision is to create a 24/7 network of just constant programming for Parks and Recreation and all the different nuanced parts of Parks and Recreation. All right, so hang tight, stay put, maybe go get another cup of coffee, go use the restroom, because up next we have the great John Prue with On the Front Line every Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So if you're in the military and you're playing basketball, there is some Parks and Rec professional running that military base that's in charge of Parks and Recreation. And every Tuesday, John talks about that. He's been doing this for like 40 years, and he's quite the talented host. And he gets some amazing guests. So stay tuned. This is Craig LeBlanc signing off for another edition of Leadership Series in the Daily Parks and Rec Show. Love you guys. See y'all here in a minute. Thanks. Bye.
Before the game, before the lights, before the pressure, there's a moment most people never see. Welcome to The Athlete's Commute, a podcast distributed by DPRS Media Network, co-produced by Her Sports, and hosted by Jordan Ziff. Each episode, Jordan gets behind the wheel, driving athletes to practice, to training, to game day, while getting to know who they really are beyond the jersey. The mindset, the grind, the sacrifices, the moments no one talks about. No scripts, no filters, just real conversations in real motion. Because every athlete has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. This is The Athlete's Commute. Buckle up.
Are you a vendor, brand, or service provider ready to connect with the heartbeat of local communities? At DPRS Media Co., we tell the stories shaping parks and recreation across America. Through podcasts, live streams, videos, and newsletters, we reach frontline leaders, city directors, and decision makers every single week. From youth sports and facilities to programming and policy, our audience is your audience. Sponsoring or partnering with DPRS Media Co. puts your brand in front of the professionals who build, budget, and buy for their communities. Launching a new product, growing your presence in public spaces, targeting cities, counties, or departments, DPRS is your trusted media partner. Whether you're in software, turf, aquatics, robotics, smart cities, or special events, partnering with DPRS puts your brand in the story. With commercials, interviews, social campaigns, newsletters, and live shows, we're your media team. Partner with us and grow your impact in the $200 billion parks and rec industry. DPRS Media Co. Stories that move parks and rec forward. Your audience is here. Let's meet them.